If you are a Java developer, you probably heard of Quarkus framework. In the Java world, there are three popular frameworks for building enterprise scale applications: Spring Boot, Quarkus, and Micronaut. In the recent times, I keep hearing Quarkus adoption is growing. So, as a long-time Spring Boot application developer, I thought of trying out how Quarkus is and explore its feature and see if it is as good as I heard. So I spent some time exploring Quarkus, and in this video I'm going to share my thoughts on Quarkus framework. Along the way, I'm going to demonstrate some of the Quarkus features that I feel awesome, and also at the end I'm going to share some opinions of mine where Quarkus can be improved. So let's get started. If you want to get started with Quarkus, you can go to quarkus.io and you may want to follow along this getting started with Quarkus, or you can go to read the guides. Quarkus provides a lot of guides organized by category, and probably you can start with getting started. Here you can see plenty of guides that you can start building your Quarkus application. So this is how you can get started. Also, there is this code.quarkus.io where you can create a Quarkus application. So basically, this is a Quarkus application generator. If you are coming from Spring Boot world, you are familiar with Spring Initializer, start.spring.io. So similarly, Quarkus also have this one, and you can see full list of all the features it supports. There are too many. But nicely, they have these presets where if you want to build a REST service back with the database, you can pick this preset where they can choose what are all the typical libraries you need for that. Similarly, if you want to build a event-driven application, you can choose this. So based on the kind of application you are building, you can choose one of these presets and generate the application and get started with. And here, I have listed down some of the features that I really like in Quarkus, and I have already generated a small REST API application talking to PostgreSQL using Hibernate ORM with Panache, and I'm going to walk you through these features in this sample application. Okay, let's get started on that. So here I have my Quarkus application, and again, if you are coming from Spring Boot background, you will feel many things very familiar. Like we have application.properties where you configure your application specific properties. Some of them are of the framework properties, and you can also have your own application specific properties. And here an interesting thing is, in a Quarkus application, you don't need a main entry point class where you have a main method, and that is what you use to start your application. You don't need one, but for whatever reason you want to have such a main entry point class, you can create a class and you can use this Quarkus main annotation and you can start the application. But Quarkus doesn't need that one. So if we don't need to have such a class, then how do we start the application, right? So during the development, the common pattern is you can start the application in development mode from the terminal. So let's go to terminal, and here I am in this project root directory, and here I can use maven quarkus:dev, which is going to start the Quarkus application in development mode. So what does this development mode does is not only starting the application, it also keep watching for the file changes and automatically live reload all the changes, and immediately you can see those changes reflected in the outcome. For example, here I have a simple app info controller and I have a basic API endpoint. Again, Quarkus uses JAX-RS standard for building RESTful API endpoints. So here I'm using JAX-RS annotations, and we have this API endpoint where we are simply returning this app info. So let's go to terminal, and here let's call localhost. This is the root API endpoint, and I'm getting the response here, right? So now let me change the version to 1.2.0, and immediately let me make a call, and here you can see the change is immediately reflected. I don't need to go ahead and stop or restart my application or do anything else. So it is not only making small code changes, even you can add more extensions. Extensions in the sense, again, if you are coming from Spring Boot background, you can think of it like a starter where you have more functionality added to your application with auto configuration and everything. So you can add more extensions, and then you can keep building your application without having to restart the application. When you are running your Quarkus application using dev mode, it is going to automatically reloads the application, and you can see the code changes reflecting in the outcome immediately. So you may ask, is it a big deal? Yes, it is a big deal, I would say, because these front-end developers have this hot reloading mechanism, and maybe it doesn't sound so fancy for them, but for a Java developer, this is really big deal. We haven't seen something like this in Java world before. So if you are programming in Java for a long time, maybe coming from WebSphere or WebLogic kind of a heavyweight application servers world, you might know the pain of making one tiny change, and then you need to build a WAR file or EAR file and stop the server, deploy your WAR file, and then restart it. Like, even if it is a tiny change, it is taking like 3 to 5 minutes, or sometimes even 10 minutes or something like that. So from that era to now, we have a Java framework where you can keep coding and then it is going to reload automatically. That is some awesomeness, I would say. So this is the first thing that people are going to enjoy when people coming from a different framework background to Quarkus. So next, I would like to explore another my favorite feature, dev services. So let's check what dev services is. So in this application, I am using Hibernate ORM with PostgreSQL database. Also, I am using Redis cache, and also I am using LGTM stack for monitoring, Loki, Grafana, etc. But I have not configured anywhere like using test containers or something like that. Quarkus automatically use test containers behind the scenes, and based on the extensions that you have added, it automatically spin up those containers using test containers behind the scenes. So if again you are familiar with Spring Boot, usually you need to add the test container dependency and then configure the beans to start those containers. But in Quarkus, it automatically takes care of that to spin up those containers automatically. For example, here we have started our application, right? Now, if we take a look at the containers, so here I am using this nice tool called Portainer. Here I can see all the containers running. Here I have PostgreSQL, I have Redis, and also I have this Grafana Hotel LGTM containers running. I have not started this manually, and also I have not configured anything to start those containers. Quarkus automatically take a look at the extensions I have added and automatically start those containers. Pretty neat, I would say. Really, like imagine onboarding a new developer into your team, and where you don't need to go ahead and say, okay, configure that, configure this and all that, where they can just clone the repository and start it. And this is a really quality of life improvement, I would say. Again, this depends on whether you have a Docker or Podman like containerization tools installed on your system. I have Docker installed, so I'm able to quickly spin up a Quarkus application which takes care of spinning up all the containers that are required by my application. So again, pretty neat. So the next feature I would like to talk about is Dev UI. This is where I would say usually there is a meme saying that take my money, like. So this is what for me the biggest thing. I mean, earlier I have got excited when I look at Django admin UI. That is really cool. And after that, this is Quarkus Dev UI is something that I feel like, wow, this is really awesome. For example, again, when we are running our Quarkus application in development mode, we can go to dev UI. Let's open dev UI. So in fact, we don't need to manually go there. Here, when you start the Quarkus application in dev mode, here you can see there are a few options, like if you want to resume testing, or you want to see more toggle output, test output, or you can press H for seeing more options. So I'm going to press H. Here it shows a bunch of options that I can do. For example, here you can see there are a dev services section where it can show by pressing C. I can see what are all the dev services that are running. Let's try that. So I'm going to press C. So here I can see there is observability container running, which is LGTM container, and also there is a PostgreSQL container running, and also there is a Redis container running. I can see all this information. Again, if I go back and see what other options I have, here you can see, okay, here D. If I press D, it will open the dev UI in browser. So let me press D. It automatically opened this localhost 8080 q/dev-ui. So basically you can, of course, you can directly open that in browser, and here based on the extensions that are added to your Quarkus application, you can see a bunch of these information. So in our application currently, we are using Hibernate ORM, and behind the scenes it is using this DB connection pool. Arc is a CDI dependency injection component. So like that, there are a bunch of information you can see. So let's take a quick look at some of them. For example, we are using Flyway migration for database migrations. So if I click on this link, you can see there is only one data source. And here you can see a couple of options. I can clean the database, or I can run the migrations again if I want to. So again, neat, handy. And here you can see we are using Prometheus for tracking metrics. Here, if you click on it, you can see all the metrics details here. Let's go back, and in the REST endpoints, you can see all the endpoints that are available in your application. And again, go back. And also I have added extensions for displaying the health of my application. Again, here you can click on. Here you can see my database connection is healthy, my Redis connection is healthy. So it shows all the health information here. And also you can go ahead and make this call to check the health of the application. So again, if you are familiar with Spring Boot, it is something similar to Actuator Health Endpoint. So that is how you can get it. And again, we have another tile here representing OpenAPI documentation. The good thing is we do not need to configure much. It is as simple as adding an extension. For example, for getting that OpenAPI documentation, I just added this. That's it. I have not done anything else. And right out of the box, I can see this nice UI where I can go to my OpenAPI documentation, and again, you know how to use this. Again, coming back here, if you want to download the OpenAPI contract in YAML format or JSON format, you can do that as well. So again, application information. So here I have added this extension to show the application information. So if I click here, I can see, okay, currently I'm running on Mac OS, and what is the Java version I'm using for this particular application, and what is the framework version, and all those details it automatically captured. Again, you can go to this particular URL. It will give the application information. So here in Hibernate ORM section, let's click on this persistence units. And here you can see currently we have only one persistence unit, and you can see the database scripts, update script, and all these things. So if you go to entity types, you can see there are two entities in our application, and if there are any named queries, it will show here. And a cool feature is this HQL Console. And let's go back to application, and here we can add some property. Here we are saying Hibernate ORM dev UI allow HQL is true. So by setting this, we can use this HQL and explore. Let's say here we have from bookmark. If you want to execute that, you can see all the bookmarks here, or you want to execute some random HQL, you can do that as well. So let's run this. So here we can explore. If you want to play with some HQL before writing in your actual code, you can do that here as well. So I would say this is really a nice feature. So like that, basically based on the extensions that you are adding in your application, there will be a lot of features that you can see here. And during the development, this really comes in very handy. Again, this here, if you want to see what are all the beans that are created in your application right now, you can go ahead and see this. And again, if you go to configuration section, here you can see the consolidated application configuration. I mean, explicitly you might configure some properties, and there are a bunch of default properties, and some of the properties are contributed from environment variables. All those details you can see here. For example, if you want to just see the properties that you explicitly configured, you can click this My Properties, and it will show the properties that you have configured explicitly in application.properties file. Similarly, if you want to see, okay, I want to see environment source, so what are all the details you got from environment, you can see that. So like that, you can even filter out, let's say, app. I have some page size or something like that. So here I can see page size, that is the property I configured. So you can just filter out and see what is the current value of the particular property here. So that is about the configuration. And there is a workspace where you can literally see all the code of your application, and even there is a link where by clicking on it, it will open the project in a IDE. I don't know what is the use case for that, but it is there. And here is another dedicated section for endpoints. Here it will show your application specific endpoints, and also various extensions contribute more endpoints, right? For example, there are a bunch of health endpoints, and also info endpoint, metrics, open API, and Swagger UI. So all these endpoints you can see. Basically, again, from Spring Boot world, you can think of it like actuator kind of thing. Here, let's say you want to check the health, you can click on it, and you see all the health information. So like that, automatically you can take a look at all the API endpoints, and you can check it out. This is another of my favorite features. Let's go back. So we talked about the dev UI, and also here, as you see, there is a concept of continuous testing as Quarkus supports, where you can let your test keep running in the background, and you keep coding new features or what are the changes you want to make. And as you code, it is going to rerun the test and immediately show if there are any errors or any failures. So you don't need to make the code changes and then go ahead and run the test. Instead, parallelly, you let those tests continuously run the behind the scenes, and you keep coding. So that is pretty neat. Let's start it here. I mean, not only from here, even from console, you can do that. So as you can see, it is running a test, and let's enable our test output. Here you can see if I press R, it is going to rerun the test again. Let me press R. So as you can see, it is running all the tests. As of now, I have 9 tests. Let's go ahead and change something and see. Let's say here I am expecting some 13 records. Let's say I change it to 11. So here it is going to rerun the test automatically, and here you can see there is a test failure. So you don't need to explicitly run. You can let the continuous testing running in the background and you keep coding. So here let's undo this, and here it is going to automatically rerun. Now all the tests are passed again. So this dev UI, and also here you can see as continuously the tests are running, you can see the results as well here. So this is a pretty neat feature of Quarkus. And again, you can see what are all the dev services that are running here. We have observability thing, LGTM, and also we have Postgres, we have Redis. So you can see all that information. Dependencies, nice visualization of what are all the dependencies you have, and you can see only the direct dependencies and everything. So I don't know much about this build matrix, but it is there. So overall, this is something that I would say a wow feature of Quarkus framework. Next, let us talk about Hibernate ORM with Panache. Supports two ways to interact with your database. One is active record and another one is repository pattern. So if you are familiar with Spring Data JPA, a repository pattern looks kind of a very familiar. Now let us take a look at how these two ways of interacting with the database looks like. So here I have two entities. One is a typical JPA entity. It is there is nothing specific to Hibernate ORM with Panache. So here it is plain JPA entity, and I can create a repository like this. Here I create a category repository, and I'm implementing this Panache repository and specifying which entity it is for. And then I can implement custom methods. By default, I'm going to inherit a lot of CRUD operations, pagination features and all that. But if I want to implement some custom methods, I can implement here. So here I want to find a category by slug, and here this find method is inherited from this Panache repository, and this is kind of act like a where class, and I'm getting if there is any category with matching slug, it is going to return. Otherwise, it's going to return an optional of empty. So basically, you can implement your own custom methods here, and you can also reuse the methods inherited from Panache repository. For example, we are using this category repository in category service. So here you can see there are methods like list all. It is going to get all the categories which is inherited from Panache repository, and also it has a find by ID optional or things like that. So you can see persist to save the changes, and also delete. So basically all the CRUD operations with pagination support and all those things that is inherited from the parent Panache repository. And again, this looks kind of similar to Spring Data JPA repository pattern. And another approach is you can create your JPA entity, and you can extend Panache entity. There are two things. One is Panache entity. So here it is a mapped superclass with ID defined like this. If you are fine with this way of defining the primary key, you can simply extend a Panache entity. Or if you want to declare your own type of ID, here I would like to use my ID based on the sequence generator. So I extended Panache entity base. So here it doesn't define the ID primary key. So I can define that. And another interesting thing to note, here I'm not using private field and then creating setters and getters. So in Panache, it is recommended to go with simply public fields. And then how do you perform various operations? Because when you are extending from Panache entity base, you get a lot of such database operations on the bookmark class itself. For example, let's go to bookmark service. Here we don't have a bookmark repository kind of thing, but here this is how we are performing the database operations. When we want to get all the bookmarks, we are simply calling bookmark on the class. list all method and specifying what to sort on. And similarly, I can get the bookmarks by using some pagination and get results out of it. Similarly, I can call this find by ID optional directly on the bookmark itself. So you get the point. So all these operations you can access directly on the entity itself when you are extending Panache entity base. So this is Act 2 record support. So which one you would prefer? It's up to you, or maybe you have some kind of a preference. But I see this is a new and interesting way of doing database operations. Next, let us take a look at logging. Again, it's not a major feature or anything like that, but Quarkus simplified certain aspects of how we use log. So typically this is how we do it, right? Like you create a logger object, preferably using static, and whichever the library you use, you can get a logger instance using the same class. This is one option. And here Quarkus out of the box supports JBoss logging library based logging support. So here you can see I use JBoss logging library and create a logger instance, and I can use that. That is option 1. Or I can use option 2, where I can directly inject using this @inject Jakarta annotation. I can inject the logger and I can use it to log. And final third option is there is a class provided by Quarkus. Here you can see IO Quarkus logging.log. So I can directly use that class and start logging. I don't need to create an instance or inject the logger, anything like that. I can directly use that class and start logging. So during the build time, Quarkus takes care of looking at this and then creating an instance of logger and doing all that during the build time. So there is no runtime overhead. So this is pretty neat, I would say. I don't need to worry about creating an instance or injecting all that. I'll simply directly start using this and add log statement, whatever I want. But one thing that kind of bothers me is this. So typically when we use SLF4J, we kind of do this and then add the placeholder values here. But with Quarkus JBoss logging, you need to use these formatters and use this infof or debugf or something like that, and you need to log. So I mean, even though if it is not a major mind-blowing feature, still I would say pretty neat, where you can simply start logging using this out of the box log class static methods. Next, let us take a look at info health endpoints. I think we have already seen this while exploring DevUI, also OpenAPI Swagger docs. Just to quickly reiterate, so here, just by adding this Quarkus info and small drive health dependencies and also OpenAPI dependency, we automatically get the defaults, and then as you can see, we can see this information like in extensions. We can see if you go to endpoints, here there are health endpoints, and you can also see individual health for each of the components, for example database, Redis, and all those things. In fact, you can even contribute your own health endpoints as well. Also, there is, if you are deploying on containers like a Kubernetes platform, you also need to have this liveness and readiness. These are also automatically provided with this health API endpoints extension. So this is pretty nice. And also when we add Prometheus here, we added this Quarkus micromet registry Prometheus extension. With this, automatically we get this metrics endpoint where we can see metrics based on the Prometheus based format. Finally, we are going to see observability. So here I have added this Quarkus OpenTelemetry extension along with dev services LGTM, so that when I start the application, it is going to collect the telemetry data and also export it to LGTM stack. So let's take a look at what happens when we start the application. So here, I think this is it. Yes. So when you have this LGTM stack added, it automatically spinned up that container and also printed here in the log where you can access this Grafana dashboard. Here, if you go to dashboards, here you can see there are some built-in uh, dashboards already created by Quarkus framework. You can go ahead and check out these. Let's go to logging. Here you can see application logs as well. So this is, I would say, for a default, this is pretty neat. So here you can see what is the uptime and other information you can see. So with minimal setup, you get all the, you can see the logs, you can see open telemetry information and all that. That too by simply adding these extensions. I have not configured anything. One thing, when we are using this open telemetry thing, we need to explicitly enable what are the things that we want to capture. So here I enabled all three: metrics, logs, and traces, and that's it. All we need to do. So these are all some of the features that I really find very interesting and that really makes developer productivity skyrocketed. And in addition to this, there are a lot of other things as well, but these are my favorites as of now, based on whatever I explored so far. And also, there are few interesting things. For example, in application.properties, typically this is a slight difference compared to Spring Boot, where in the same file you can configure properties for different profiles. So by default, all these profiles are production profiles, but you can configure different profile properties by prefixing with percentage and profile name, percentage dev, percentage test, things like that. And also we have seen like dev services automatically spin up the containers. But if you want to change, maybe you want to use a little older version or later version, you can customize which Docker image you would like to use. So you can configure all those properties here as well. So I would say this is pretty neat. And also when it comes to testing, Quarkus automatically provides configuration for RestAssured. So we don't need to actually hook up this, whatever the port the application is starting. So that also we can configure. For example, if we take a look at this, I configured a test port to be 0, which means it is going to run on a random port. So basically when you are running the tests on a pipeline, probably in Jenkins or whatever, so it shouldn't conflict with other things. So I prefer to set it to 0 so that it is going to pick one of the available random port. By default, if you don't configure this, it is going to be 8081, a fixed port, but I prefer to set it to 0. And so these are things, and once you have that, you can directly use RestAssured and invoke this test. So that is all I would like to show, and these are the things I really like. Now let's talk about something that I feel that can be improved in Quarkus. Here I'm going to share my overall opinion on Quarkus and also gonna share my thoughts on some things that can be improved in Quarkus. So overall, as you can see, I really like a lot of features provided by Quarkus, and there are really improve the productivity of developer. And now talking about improvements, I would like to start with this application generator here. This is a nice gesture for creating presets where they can pick and then proceed further and then add additional extensions going forward. But this complete list is a very overwhelming list and also a bit confusing. For example, if I want to create a REST API, there is a REST extension and then REST JSON, REST JSON. So you are kind of giving too many options for the user instead of making a recommendation. For example, if Quarkus team recommends using JSON, When I select REST as a transitive dependency, add this, whatever. Don't give too many options to the user. Maybe if somebody really want to use a different library for whatever reason, maybe they are knowledgeable enough to switch that and use whatever they want to use. But right now, imagine a junior developer come here and try to pick the libraries that they want to use, and if they are not very well versed with Java ecosystem, they don't know which one to use. They don't know whether to pick this Jackson or JSONB. There are too many options. And if you scroll down again, there are some classic versions of it as well, like REST classic JSONB, classic JSONB. So I understand there are people who want to pick these for whatever the needs they have, but from a beginner point of view, this is very overwhelming. I mean, if you go down and there is a section where camel libraries, there are kind of easily there are 100 such extensions. I don't know whether they are all needs to be listed here, or you provide some high level based on the common use case scenarios and then let them decide and pick the additional things. But again, from the newbie point of view, some of these are little overwhelming. So that is that. And next thing is, when it comes to testing support, I really like how quickly Quarkus application bootstraps, so you can spin up all the application components and then test. But still, for certain aspects, it is lacking. For example, for my integration test, I would like to clean up the data and then set up some test data. Right now, I don't see a way to run a SQL script, and I just want to set up the test data only for this particular controller related things. I don't, for now, there is no such support to execute any SQL script. So I ended up doing this way, where I am cleaning up the whole database and then rerunning the migration, so that I know the database data is in a known state, so that I can run the test in any order. I mean, there are workarounds where you can decide to run the test in a particular order, which I don't particularly like. So it is kind of lacking here. But I think Quarkus team is already collecting the approaches where we can support all these use cases, particularly coming from other frameworks background. But still, at the moment, that is something that is lacking. And another thing that I would like to talk about, so Quarkus is more like a built on Jakarta E standards. And I know it is implementing a lot of features based on the standard implementations, micro profile and small array. All these things are standards compliant libraries and implementations. Now, when I pick Quarkus, I mean, it is nice to treat it as standards based, but that is not the primary thing that I look at. Let's say I'm an architect. I pick Quarkus looking at how many features it provides depending on my application needs and how performant it is. That is the decision factor for 95% of the case. This standards based is nice to have, but I don't make the decision based on that factor. Now, you can shield the implementation details in a framework level and provide a unified Quarkus interface. So when for example, a good example would be, so here I am using database and I am configuring, right now I'm not configuring because I'm using dev services, but if I configure database properties, I don't configure it for a specific library that is using under the hood for database connection pool. I'm configuring quarkus.jdbc.url something, and you take care of using whatever the library under the hood to create a connection pool, and you do that. That is the right way. But here, some of the things are not like that. For example, if you take a look at Quarkus with RabbitMQ, and let's go to this section. So here, if I need to configure certain things, I need to use these micro profile based properties. So essentially, the developer needs to go and check based on the implementation library. You need to configure these things. Uh, Personally, I feel you are asking the developer to go deep into what is the implementation library Quarkus is using and configure the properties. Rather, I would prefer put Quarkus start messaging income request whatever, and then you delegate the properties configuration within the framework itself to whatever the implementation library you are using. Shield me as an application developer, shield me from the implementation library. I don't need to know what is the implementation you are using. Maybe tomorrow you can change that to something else, and that other library needs a different set of configuration. You do that at the framework level. Shield that from the application developers. So I would prefer it should be like a Quarkus messaging incoming request whatever, and then you take care of rest of the plumbing within the framework level. So that is one thing I would say. I mean, apart from this, I do not have major concerns. In fact, I really like most of the features, whatever I seen. And also, I know Quarkus is also providing a lot of features in the AI space, integrating with LangChain for J and all that. I'm eager to explore that area as well. So basically, I have very good impression on Quarkus, and I highly recommend you to take a look at it, explore it. So let me know in the comments what features you like the most about Quarkus, and I hope this video helps if you are coming from with a different framework background to get a gist of how Quarkus is and what kind of a features it provides to explore further. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye bye.